Welcome to the Love the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Belt, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 Through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former NFL scout Bryan Broaddus. He is a Super Bowl winner. He is also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 Through the Fan in Dallas. He's also the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network, and he is not the only introduction I have today. We also have Father Jon Machota, as the great Kent Garrison refers to the one and only Jon Machota from The Athletic, and he is also the co-host of the fairly new Cowboys podcast. What is the exact title of it? Because I was about to say One Star Cowboys, but I didn't know if there was like another word in there I'm missing, John.
Yeah, One Star Cowboys podcast.
One Star Cowboys podcast. There you go. A continuation of About Them Cowboys, essentially. So you guys can find them over there. They do great work himself. Kevin Turner and Saad Youssef, along with Kent Garrison. Bryan, awesome to have you here today. Hope you're well. And Jon Machota, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so here's my here's the hacky direction I want to go with this today. And we should be live on YouTube, by the way. This is a first for us here, but we'll do our mailbag and everything here shortly. But I wanted to launch in these first two segments that we do today. Mike McCarthy talks a lot about trimesters, not the type where women are bringing a child along, but in the season. And he also talked about delivering a State of the Union, and he came out very, I'll say, for a coach that I find to be fairly defensive a lot of the times. I felt Monday he came out on the offensive and was, hey, here's our solutions. We're ready to go. We're ready to play good football. And we've got all these different marks that we're checking off. And so I thought he was actually pretty good on Monday, kind of addressing things. But with his State of the Union talk and kind of a reflection on the bye week, I wanted to kick things off with just a question for you guys today. And this is where I said my hacky question comes in. John, we'll lead off with you. I want you to describe the Cowboys through 7 weeks of the NFL season in 7 words or less. How would you summarize them right now?
All right, you gave me a heads up on this, and I still hate doing this. I hate when people ask me this on the spot. And I also, when I watch interviews with other people, I hate when people say, describe something in 2 or 3 words. I'm just not good at it at all. So the only thing I can come up with is it's not as good as I thought it would be. I thought the Cowboys would be better. I thought the Cowboys, and I don't mean necessarily 3-3 is 3-3. Maybe they would have been 3-3. It's the 3 losses at home, and it's how bad those losses have been. There's people that will say, hey, they're only 3-3. That's not that bad. Why are they getting all ripped? Why is everyone, so upset with Jerry? There's a lot of injuries. Hey, if they lost those 3 games in the fourth quarter or on final drives and things like that, it would be a lot different. For being a team that won 16 games in a row at home and then to lose the way they did against the Packers, like sports don't work out this way. Like, sports don't go this way to where you're like, oh yeah, wait till you see the way they'll start the regular season. Their first 3 home games will look just like the Packers game, and it'll be 3 wildly different opponents. Like that, it has been very surprising to me that it has started this way, just with those home games and how lopsided they've been.
Bryan, same for you. 7 words or less. How would you describe this Cowboys season?
Troubling, confusing, anything you want to say about this football team. I think that there are more things about this team that is troubling and confusing is really what I'm trying to say here. Anytime that I ever think that I have an understanding of what they're trying to do, something else will happen. And I feel like that me personally, feel like that I overrated this team in several different areas. Felt like that their offensive line was going to be one of the strengths of their team. I felt like that the secondary was going to be one of the strengths of their team. The linebackers I thought were going to be much improved. I think that's an area that's improved. The defensive line is not as good, and the offensive line is not as good. And so the words I would use is troubling and very confusing. And the confusing part of it can come from the coaching aspect of things. That you don't see some of the things that you should be addressing quickly enough. And the prime example of this just recently was Mike McCarthy telling the media about that they're getting more twist stunts up front, and they're getting that because of Cooper Beebe's inexperience. This is something we've been seeing since week 2, and we're addressing it in week 6, week 7. That's troubling to me on that aspect. So troubling, confusing, those are the words I would describe this football team right now.
I'm going to take the less approach on 7 words or less, and I'm going to go 6. And it's I think the Cowboys can be summarized for me right now as play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like when you approach the offseason the way this team did, with all the different losses that they had, when you approach the contract situations that they have, whether they be coaching ones or player contracts or other things, I don't think they can be totally surprised that, you know, every single loss is magnified and every single loss comes with big, 10,000 foot view questions. And that eventually, look, here's the honesty of it. With this thing feeling like it's spiraling a little bit, even at 3-3, during this bye week, I bet you there are coaches on that staff this week that were calling people around the league going, hey, you think there's going to be something open next year? I just don't know how this is going.
No question.
I don't know where this is heading for me right now. So I think right now this is the result of just constantly banking on scouts will bail us out. Will McClay will bail us out. They're going to draft starters for us at every single position. They'll replace all this depth that we lost. Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, Tyler Biotish, like all the different players that they lost, they just got decimated on their depth. I've said it. I know people are tired of hearing it, but I've repeated it 1,000 times at this point. I think that when they're healthy, guy 1 through 22, their starting lineup is still one of the 10 best in the NFL. I think guy 23 through 53 is a bottom 10 roster in the NFL. I just don't think their depth is good at all. And you're seeing what happens as soon as you start losing guys or as soon as starters are underperforming and not playing well. That's kind of what you get. I will say, I thought it was interesting something you just said, John, because this is one of the things that I really wanted to dial in on, because Jerry keeps talking about we're 3-3. We're 3-3, keeps hammering home that line. And I know you had just mentioned, hey, they are 3-3. That's kind of where they're, and totally accurate. They've won the games that they're probably supposed to, other than maybe the New Orleans game, and they've lost the other games. But here's what I'm curious about for you guys, and I'll start with you, John. That old Bill Parcells line, you are what your record says you are. Are the Cowboys the very definition of that? Meaning, yeah, this is what you get. You get a basically up and down type of team. This is the Cowboys. This is what they are. Or are they the team that actually challenges the wisdom of that and says, no, you are not a 500 team. This is actually much worse than just 500 right now?
I mean, normally I would have a very quick answer on this, but I'm telling you right now, a lot of it for me depends on this Sunday, because if they go out in San Francisco, who is obviously a team that's beaten up pretty badly, this is a shell of the San Francisco teams that have beaten them in the past. They have played better. The Cowboys have played better on the road. If they look like that better road team, there's a part of me that can sit there and say, no, they're like a 3-3 team, or if they win that game, let's say a 4-3 team, no better, no worse. They deserve that. You go and win that. You go and lose that game and drop to 3-4 and look like the team that we've seen them at home against. Then it's bottom's completely fallen out. Like, I don't know if you even get the train back on the tracks. It could seriously be that bad. So as I sit here right now, I do think that they're probably deserving of being 3-3. But it does leave a bad taste with just how lopsided those losses have been. And the other part of it is just with how poorly they've played at home. Even that Detroit game, like, let's say they go into that game completely healthy. Yeah. I'm even going to go all the way back to camp. I'm going to give you Sam Williams. I'm going to give you Thielen. I'm going to give you all these guys. I still don't think that they win that game. Nope. Maybe it's a little bit closer, but I don't look at it as like, well, they're just beat up with injuries and the Lions were coming off a bye week. I'm just like, no, you guys aren't in the same class as them.
Yeah, you know what? There's two things that are leading me to believe they are who they are right now. The win against the Browns, because that was opening day. That was everybody healthy, everybody ready to go. And that was an impressive win. There's some teams, there's some people around the league that picked these games and thinking that Cleveland was going to win that football game. And Dallas went out and dominated them. And the second one is the Pittsburgh win, because it was a gutty win. They were down players, and they found a way to drive the ball and go and win the game. They found a way to get stops, get off the field. Pittsburgh, to me, looks like a pretty good team. You know, you look at them defensively, and we'll see now with Russ Wilson at quarterback. They with Mike Tomlin, they're well coached. So my hope going forward is that you're more like the team that beat the Steelers and beat Cleveland on the road. That the teams that lost the home games, I don't know what team that is. I don't know. And I think that's why you're 3-3 right now, because you really don't know. It's like I say, I use the word confusing because I think they're capable of playing good football. They just don't play it nearly enough now.
What an indictment it is on the other team's quarterback when they play the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I said this when the season ended, and maybe Jordan Love goes on and he'll prove me wrong and he'll win MVPs or whatever. But there was a part of me when he got that contract, I'm like, do they think it's because that he's that guy that's against the Cowboys all the time? And I just think it's funny that since then, it's just like, okay, season opener, Cleveland.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson's bad. That's not a good football player right there.
Yeah.
You look at the wins. I mean, you could make an argument that there were plays to be made out there against Pittsburgh, and Fields was so bad that might have been the factor with
fair.
Tomlin being like,
that's fair.
I mean, when Kyle Allen comes in for one play and just puts it right down the field, you're just kind of looking around, you're like, whoa. And then just the way George Pickens is not even getting targeted. And then maybe you guys feel differently, but I feel what Daniel Jones is what Daniel Jones is there. So,
no, he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why it is kind of interesting to me, where that's why I say, like, they should probably play pretty well against San Francisco. But I do think Brock Purdy's a good player. So I'm thinking, is this going to come down to, well, hey, their quarterback played well, and so that's another Cowboys loss? I mean, I hate to make it just about one position, but it has been interesting in these wins and losses for them.
The biggest fear that you should have in this game coming up is that San Francisco decides that they just don't want to throw the ball, that they're going to get their running game going again. And they're just going to beat you up front, and they're going to not give you any opportunity. And, they'll get some stops because Dallas will get behind, and they'll just keep running the ball. That to me, and I watched a little San Francisco's offense last night. I'm going to watch a lot more of it tonight after our show here. But I just kind of feel like, though, San Francisco has the ability to just, if they want to, run the ball on Dallas with that back and be able and make Purdy have to play a play action game and make Dallas even have to cover, 4th, 5th, 6th wide receivers.
We are live on the 105 Through the Fan YouTube. If you guys want to chime in and share some of your thoughts, here's a question here that I think goes to the State of the Union. Yeah, go ahead, Bryan.
Can I switch something real quick? And Bobby, go ahead and ask your question, because I want to make a comment. Maybe we could get to it after your question. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just on my mind.
No, you're good.
But I wanted the thing about Jerry Jones and talking about Henry, let me hit this question really quick from the YouTube. We'll answer this one, and then let's spend the next segment just kind of unpacking a lot of what Jerry said. I want to ask you guys a question about the Henry situation, just from what I heard from Jerry, and I want to see if you guys maybe share the same idea with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump to this question really quickly, because I think it's something that I think is worth talking about because of how solidly I think the answer is no. Daniel Lopez asks on the YouTube, did you get a sense in the Jerry interview that firing McCarthy was on the table during the bye? I think that was not a great interview if you're looking from Mike McCarthy's perspective, some of the things that Jerry Jones had to say. But, man, to 15 years after the fact, basically apologize to Wade Phillips for firing him.
He did.
A week after saying, I'm never going to fire a coach during the season again. And to just list out all these different things, I think there wasn't a shot Jerry was going to fire Mike McCarthy during the bye. And I think it would take an act of God, honestly, to get Mike McCarthy fired in the season at this point, and not just because Jerry was blaming poor decisions on the devil making him do it. But John, Bryan, both of y'all's thoughts. I don't think that was ever a consideration for them during the bye week.
No, and I think Jerry likes Mike a lot, which surprises me about how little Jerry did in the offseason. Because you can look at the offseason and go, man, you were setting up your head coach to fail. It was almost like you were just going to go through the motions of, he's got another year left on his contract. He's won 12 games each of his last 3 years. I'm not going to do a lot to really improve this roster. It's on him. He's going to have to do what we give him and show me that, he's worth a second contract, but I'm not going to really improve this roster like you would think, and like we'll get in the Henry thing, obviously. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I never thought he would part ways with McCarthy. And one thing that really stands out to me too is the fact that there's not a coach on McCarthy's staff that would be that really makes sense as the successor. Like if the defense is balling and it's just like this outdated offense that's holding the team back, yeah, then Mike Zimmer has head coaching experience and all that, but it's like there's not enough on the defense where you're like, yeah, let's pull Mike Zimmer away from just focusing on the defense, also make him the head coach now. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I've never thought that. I've always thought that Jerry's going to give him till the end of the season and evaluate it at the end of the year, kind of like he did it in Jason Garrett's last year of his contract. And if he wants to go another direction, he'll do it then. But no, I think he will give Mike all the way till the end of the season.
Yeah, there's a side of me that believe that if you lost to an undermanned 49ers team, that there might be a possibility. That was before I listened to Jerry talk this morning.
Yep.
I thought that if you go and Jerry and Steven are fans too, they're seeing all the injuries that San Francisco's dealing with. They're looking at their team. Sure, Dallas has a lot of injuries too that they're dealing with. They probably will be without Micah Parsons in this game. But they're in a situation right now where Jerry's looking at it as like, hell, we should have enough to beat San Francisco with what we got. We should. With all their injuries, we should be okay here. And I kind of felt like that if they lost that game, then it would be then Mike McCarthy might be in question. But after listening to Jerry talk today, no chance. This thing's going 17 games is what it's going to do.
Something else I've thought of and other media members have mentioned as well is what if this staff had Jason Witten as the tight end coach? I'm not like, can you just imagine the outside noise?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, oh,
let's make
the outside noise, the inside noise.
Yeah, that's true too. But I'm just saying, like, if there was something like that,
right.
there isn't that coach on the staff. I know that a lot of fans and media members and people around the team think a lot of Al Harris. I just don't see them going in that direction. Obviously, he's the assistant head coach. If it was like for the last 3 or 4 games of the season, I think you'd go Bones Fossil to just
Bones Fossil would be, yeah.
But I don't think you're doing that right now. That wouldn't make any sense. Everything, even though it doesn't seem that bright right now, everything is still technically in front of you. So that's the only reason why I just don't think he would do that to Mike. I don't. If he's going to give Jason Garrett to the end, he's not going to, and especially to say the stuff he said today, he's not going to let a Super Bowl winning head coach just go in the middle of the season, unless there would have to be so many things behind the scenes that they're like that pointed to Mike being the issue, which just isn't the case.
We've talked about it before. I've heard Jerry was very much set, or the Cowboys were very much set on in 2020. They were going to, the plan was when we get to the bye, Mike Nolan will get blown out. And when reports started coming out about, Mike Nolan's not good at his job, and there were all these media, that I think Jerry had evaluated, like, I'm not going to look like I make decisions based on people,
the media,
media pushing me around. That's not going to happen. I kind of wonder if maybe something's starting to set in place here, where when he says last week, it'll never happen again. Right. I think that's, you guys are not going to tell me what to do. So I've just decided already, I'm dug in on this. You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Bryan, the big headline.
Hey, real quick. Great app. Yeah. Great app, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it is seriously, like, because not only does it have your guys' station on there, 105.3 The Fan, but it's got 97.1 The Ticket, which is in Detroit. And so, like, when the Tigers went on this huge run, like, I have the app already for 105.3 The Fan, but it's just like the same exact thing. The thing I love about it, real quick, I'm not going to ramble on too much, but, like, you can go back, like, 2, 3, 4 days. You know what I'm saying? And, like, if you miss something, you can just catch up on, like, whatever it is. And so, I mean, I think they do a great job. I don't know. But anyway, sorry.
Boy, Audacy's about ready to deposit money into your bank account, I think, after that glowing review of the Audacy app right there. Jon Machota just told you about it. Bryan, a couple different headlines coming out of the Jerry interview on Tuesday, but you kind of mentioned it a second ago. A lot of it was the Derrick Henry stuff,
right?
Which I do got to laugh a little bit. And he said, I'll find somebody else to ask these questions. And sure enough, he asked his first question himself. I'm going to ask myself about Derrick Henry because I want to ask under my terms. But Bryan, what were your takeaways on the Henry thing and kind of what you thought about it? Yeah,
I thought it was really, really interesting. And I want to run this by you too, because I really do like your opinion on these kinds of things. Do you feel like that Jerry, now we all know about the salary caps and they talk about, hey, we couldn't afford him and we were thinking about this and all that. Do you think honestly, and this is where I think that Jerry, if he would just say this would make me feel a lot better if I was a Cowboy fan. We didn't want Derrick Henry. We evaluated Derrick Henry and we didn't feel like that he was a good enough player. Derrick Henry is an older veteran player. We've kind of found you get to a certain level, the carries start to pile up, you get slower, you get wore down. If Jerry would have come out and said that, because I, in my heart of hearts, believe that Jerry Jones, yes, we all know that you can sign whoever you want. We know that. You know we will find money, we'll kick the can, we'll do whatever we have to do. I would feel a lot better about the situation if Jerry would have just said, we didn't like him as a player, and they missed the evaluation. They're not the only team in the NFL that missed the evaluation. There's a lot of backs in this league right now. You could just add them all up. You know, Jones, the kid at Green Bay, Joe Mixon, Dobbins, all these guys. The league has a philosophy about backs, and nobody wants to pay a back. You know, even though some teams said, well, we might have to do it because now maybe these teams are really good evaluating teams. Maybe these are teams that they're, and I'm not trying to kick Alex Loomis and those guys in the junk right now in the pro department. But if Jerry would have just come out and said, we didn't want Derrick Henry, and they, you know, and then they made the mistake of not wanting Henry, but then signing Zeke because they could probably get the thing a little bit. They know the player, you know, in their mind, a legendary player. Do you think that Jerry Jones, if he would just come out and say that people would leave him alone about this?
No, it would be worse because it would be like, you're the general manager. You can't evaluate talent.
They're not the only team, John, that missed on this guy.
100%, but I don't think Jerry looks at it that way. And I think when he says, well, we couldn't afford him, then he can at least point to, well, we signed Dak, we signed CD, we're going to sign Micah. So, you know, money's tight over here. And that's his out on that. And to be honest with you, when you bring up him talking about Derrick Henry, it kind of ties in with how shocked I was last week in his response on the radio, because I was standing outside the Cowboys locker room about 30 minutes after they lost to the Ravens, and that was an embarrassing loss. I know the scoreboard looks like it was closer than it was. That was an embarrassing loss, and Derrick Henry was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And Jerry was asked about Derrick Henry, and he had a quick answer of, we couldn't afford Derrick Henry. I mean, I almost dropped my phone. I couldn't tweet it fast enough because I just knew how much that would get under people's skin. And within 5 minutes, you know how the pack around him, it eventually dissipates, but also some new people might come in.
Right.
5 minutes later, 7 minutes tops, a new reporter comes in, asks him about Derrick Henry again. Right. Jerry, as calm as can be, almost gives the same exact answer. And that's how I'm used to Jerry Jones being, where I'm like, in this setting, after this loss, if a coach or a GM or anybody talks to you like that, as soon as that person asks it again, they're just going to something quick, like, well, we already answered that, next question or something. Jerry never does that. And that's why because I've been around that Jerry Jones so much, that's what feeds into me being so stunned by how he acted on the radio last week, because usually there's nobody better than Jerry Jones at handling those type of situations. So I don't know what's changed with him, but it's odd. It's odd to me. But to your point, though, for them not even to call him, and for how much Derrick Henry has talked about living in the Dallas area.
They missed the evaluation, John. They 100%, missed it.
Yes.
They missed it. They missed this evaluation. And
let me just be fair here, too. I did as well. I helped my brother.
And that's
I helped
what
my
I'm
brother
saying.
with all
that's
of his fantasy football teams.
That's what I'm saying.
And he was all about drafting Derrick Henry, and I told him in every single one, I'm like, don't draft Henry. These look at the wear and tear. This kid had like 60 carries in a single high school game. He had tons of wear and tear at Alabama. He's had nothing but wear and tear at Tennessee. So I completely agree. So I hate being the person that's just going to be all critical. I would be the first to say if they made that move, there would have been some criticism at the time. Like, you're going to invest $8 million in that older back. Okay, let's see.
That's what I'm saying.
But it looks great right now, so everyone's going to Monday morning quarterback.
No, absolutely. And this is where I don't think the Dallas Cowboys were the only pro department to miss. And I'm including all these running backs.
Yeah.
Because all these guys are having production. Now, the fact that Henry is as rare as they come. But you started, I went around on my show today on 105.3 The Fan, the G-Bag Nation, and I went with Gavin Dawson. He goes, I wouldn't have signed him. Zach Wolchuk, no, I don't think so at the time. I wouldn't have done it. Eric Chiafalo, he's like, you know me, I ain't going to spend $8 million on a running back.
Right.
You know? So to me, I feel like that maybe that Jerry got mad because his scouting department, which has been so ballyhooed, I think I used the right word there, so cheers, so, hey, they draft, they sign, his scouting department probably feels like they let him down. They let him down, because you would gladly give Derrick Henry $8 million right now if he could do this for you. Now, let me say this. If you look at metrics, his success rate of 4 yards of a 4 yard average or better on runs is the exact same as Rico Dowdle, but he has 75 more carries. So you're thinking, well, man, if they just could run the ball with Rico Dowdle, maybe they could have some. But they get behind in games; they can't run the ball. They just don't do it well enough, and they get behind in games. But I'm just saying, I think Jerry is more mad. Not because they couldn't afford him, but they were one of the teams that missed him. That's where I think I think that's where they're at.
There's a lot to unpack here. I was wrong about Derrick Henry too, but there's no chance I would have wanted to pay him $8 million. Probably would have gotten on the radio and bitched them out about it.
Yeah.
To be completely honest, probably would have spent a whole segment breaking down why this is stupid. But the reality is also he is on pace. He is on pace now to finish 15 yards ahead of Eric Dickerson for the single season rushing record right now. He is halfway to the highest rushing total any 30-year-old running back's ever had, which again speaks to the unprecedented nature of him. Here's my biggest problem. You did for what is the favored scouting or pro personnel
24/7 365.
What do they do with every player? What does Steven love to say? We're going to do our due diligence.
Due diligence
for a team that is.
I think they did their due diligence. I think they got him wrong.
Brian,
I think they got him wrong. I think they got him wrong.
Sure, but and this is all I'm saying. This wouldn't have been the case, but you would have been in favor of paying Derrick Henry $2 million over Ezekiel Elliot, right?
Oh, absolutely. You would.
I don't think Derrick Henry's taking $2 million, but I don't know because you didn't pick up the phone, and your excuse was, well, such a great player, we don't want to offend him with our low ball offer. If you're going to tell me due diligence, at least for a guy who is basically publicly pining in the media, Earl Thomas was over and over, I want to be a Cowboy. Come get me. Like John had the famous video right there outside the locker, of come get me. And then they picked up the phone and they were told $15 million. And they said, okay, you don't want to be a Cowboy bad enough. Bye. They didn't even pick up the phone on Derrick Henry. And
probably
Henry,
because they didn't think that Derrick Henry could play like the rest of us.
But again, you don't know, you didn't even pick up the phone to bother to find out what's the number and is it a number I feel comfortable with? That's where
because they were going to all along. It was about Zeke. It was never if Zeke had just retired and wasn't in play. Maybe things are different. But once they kind of figured out that Zeke was probably going to be cheaper, I bet you they knew Derrick Henry's number. I bet you they knew his number. I bet you somebody at Derrick Henry's camp reached out and said, hey, we'd be interested in coming to Dallas.
But why
possible.
Not? They haven't even said that. They just say we couldn't afford $8 million. They don't bother saying.
See, this is what bothers me. Just don't tell me that. Don't tell me you can't afford because I've seen teams all the time afford guys. I do. I see teams all the time figure it out. I see that guy in Philadelphia figure it out all the time. These guys in Dallas are smart enough to figure it out.
Can I and really quickly, we're about to get to our mailbag segment here, and we've got some questions lined up. But if you want to throw in your questions here for the live mailbag on the YouTube, feel free to do that as well. Just drop your question in there. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Here's what I think is the reality. I don't think Jerry wrote this off to just. I'll give him credit for this. I don't think Jerry just wrote it off to too expensive. Looked at it. He's too expensive. I think Jerry was pretty routinely this offseason calling people and having meetings and saying, why do they say I can afford it and you say I can't?
I agree.
I think Jerry absolutely was looking for, I'll accept it, but you need to tell me why they say, why is there this article over here? Why is Jason Fitzgerald over the cap writing this article that says you do have the money to do this?
Yeah.
Why is, Andrew Brandt over here writing on the Business of Sports about, well, you can do this. Joel Corey on CBS Sports. Why do I see this stuff that says I can and you tell me I can't? Explain that to and
they won't admit when they're wrong. They won't admit it.
I think he asked for those answers, though. I think he did demand those answers.
They don't admit when they're wrong about Tristan Hill or Taco Charlton. They don't admit it. They don't want to talk about those mistakes. So they conjure up, and I believe this, they conjure up the guise of the salary cap. They missed him, but they weren't the only team to miss him. They did not think that Derrick Henry could play. I believe that with all my heart right now. That's why I think Jerry keeps bringing it up. Because he knows, he's like, damn, we missed this one. Yeah, I wish he'd just say it. I wish he would just come out and say, we missed Derrick Henry and we missed several other backs. Because he doesn't want to make it look bad about Zeke, which they also probably missed on that one too.
Oh, they absolutely. So if you go look at, and just take out, and I know I've done this and people have bitched at me about it, but the idea of, you mismanaged the cap, to be in all honesty, in terms of the way you released Ezekiel Elliott. So he cost you $8 million this year. I know $6 million of it is a spread cap charge from the year before, but that has to be accounted for in terms of how did you mismanage that contract, and what did you do in going and paying another $2 million to where he's $8 million. But even if you want to count it as $2 million, that still puts Zeke in terms of cap charges for free agents that change teams this year. That still puts him in the top 15 for running back free agents that change teams this year. I think puts him like 10th. If that's the case, Zeke is 15th out of those 15th in rush yards over expectation.
Exactly.
So you didn't just miss on Derrick Henry. You also missed on Zeke, and you also missed on, Aaron Jones.
That's what I'm saying.
But to be fair, to be fair, everybody does. So I hate when people bring up all the misses because every team does.
No, see, that's what I'm saying.
You missed worse. You missed worse than anybody else.
Contract to Carson Wentz. San Francisco traded the world for Trey Lance, and they're great. And you can, the way I think this whole thing's going to play out in Pittsburgh. I mean, I have Pittsburgh in super high regard, and the way they've dealt with quarterbacks since Roethlisberger. I mean, there's plenty of teams but it's about what do you do after you make those mistakes. That just comes with it. Everyone's going to make these mistakes. To act like sit there and bring up like, well, they gave Amari Cooper's money to Michael Gallup. If you make that mistake, but then rebound from it and make up for it, I don't care about that mistake because everyone's going to nobody is going to be perfect on any of these things.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I would rather you admit that, hey, we missed that one.
Right.
We just missed that one. Don't hide behind we can't sign the guy. Don't that to me is that because I see others doing it, and I that's my final thought on that. If you want to come out and say, as a scouting department, we missed Derrick Henry, but we also missed some other running backs well. But I think what's happened to a lot of teams is they've got into this mode of we don't want to pay a back. We don't want to pay one. We don't, hey, we can find cheap backs and all that. And now, and this last class got some money. Some teams were smart. Some teams were really smart with what they did. They paid their pro department hit it right. But like I said, I just don't want to keep hiding behind the salary cap thing. Just come out and say, like, hey, we can only account for ourselves. We missed Derrick Henry. Hopefully we won't let that happen again in the future.
And you can totally take that even
so much. Yeah, go ahead.
If you draft a running back in the third or fourth round, either of the last two drafts, you could have taken yourself completely out of the Henry thing because you would have just been like, no, this was our young guy. We understand he's not Derrick Henry, but we want to give our young guy these carries. Now, when I talked to Will McClay before the season started, he said that when it got to the third or fourth round, they did not see backs that they thought were that much better.
They had Rico Dowdle back. They had Rico Dowdle
Right.
backs. That's exactly right.
And one more point just before we get to the mailbag. The idea of, and I understand it's true in a lot of ways, but when they've talked about, well, we haven't been able to get the run game going in a lot of these games because we're just getting the doors blown off us or this or that's happening. I went and looked this up today. When the game is within 7 points, all plays within the game is within 7 points, the Cowboys rank 25th in rush rate. So they're really not trying to establish the run even in close ball games. They're not. And Dowdle, look, to their credit, when they tried to get some things going against Pittsburgh, it looked effective. Like they had some success with it. There's obviously a lot that's gone sideways for the Cowboys.
Well, it all fits together. If you really wanted to run the football, you would have done more in the offseason at running back. But the actions.
Well, don't. If you're Jerry Jones, don't be telling Jon Machota and Calvin Watkins and Todd Archer and guys and gals standing at the Senior Bowl that we need to play better run defense. We need to run the ball better. Don't tell me those things. Don't tell me those things.
You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, it is now time for our Dean Julio Love of the Star mailbag, where we turn things over to our dear sweet listeners, get their thoughts, their comments, their questions, talk about the things that they want to talk about. And John will join us for this today. First question. Let's get away from the fog of just all the big picture negativity. Let's drill down and ask some Ryan Flournoy questions, which is what Bob Davis is doing. Bob wants to know, do you think Ryan Flournoy, and we'll lead off with you, Brian, do you think Ryan Flournoy will be subject to the same black hole that they put Hunter Lipke in after his fumble last year?
God, I hope not. Kid's got some ability, big, tall, good looking, can catch the football. He just got to learn to switch hands. When you're running with the ball, learn to switch hands, keep it to the outside. Both Lion defenders, brilliant on their part, punching at the ball. That kid fumbled during the preseason too. Maybe they had a little bit of scouting report about, hey, if you fight the ball with this kid, punch at the ball with this kid, he might drop it on you. I think that might be a well-coached team right there because remember he had the fumble in the preseason as well. So, but I don't think he's going in the black hole. No, you just need to keep finding ways to get him active and keep finding a way to throw him the football.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I don't think he is either, just because, Jerry's made it pretty clear they're not going to do anything at the trade deadline. As much as these names like Cooper Kupp are going to be floated out there, the Cowboys aren't going to make a move for that. So what do you have at wide receiver? You need a Jalen Tolbert or a Ryan Flournoy or Ryan Flanoy or a Jalen Brooks.
I haven't gotten that right yet. I'm still working on that pronunciation.
Flanoy. Yeah, Flanoy.
Well, he said it was fine when we asked him right after he got drafted, but since come to find out it's Flanoy. But anyway, so I do believe that when you have like your 6th, 7th round picks, whether it's Flanoy or back when they took Cedric Wilson or a Jalen Brooks, like they're just kind of a lottery ticket. You hope one of them hits, and I do think that out of one of them that could be like your number 4 receiver, maybe number 3, depending on how they progress. But I just think that in this offseason, you got to really address and bring in another wide receiver because there isn't enough talent there right now to get the job done. And maybe one of those guys emerge, and that's great. If that happens, that's icing on the cake. But where I sit right now, I'm not really counting on that to happen. If it does, that's wonderful. But I don't know right now that they have like a legitimate 2, 3, 4 receiver right now. There's just a lot of questions I have about the receiving core, to be honest with you.
Next question here from John. We've heard obviously that Jerry is not going to make a head coaching change. That's not happening. I think we all agree that won't happen. But John wants to know, do you think Brian Schottenheimer will be calling plays at any point this season? John, start with you.
I don't. As long as Mike McCarthy's the head coach, I don't see, especially in the final year, why would you take that away from him? His job's on the line, and he's been the guy that's called your plays the entire time. It's not like Schottenheimer was hired as, let's say, the OC to be like, hey, I'm gonna run this offense, and then Mike's like, I don't really like how it's going. I'm gonna take it over now, and then you go back to him. It's not like that. This was always McCarthy was going to go down doing this or succeed doing this. And so, no, I do not see that happening.
You know what? Really quickly, you know what I think Brian Schottenheimer's main role is with this offense? I think Brian Schottenheimer oftentimes is a bridge between
he teaches the offense.
Well, I think
he teaches it in the meetings.
I think he is a bridge to the quarterbacks to say, hey guys, like this is how Mike's looking at this. Yeah. And I think the other side of that, because I think he does have a really good relationship with Dak and a lot of guys on offense. I think the other part of that is he's going to Mike and saying, hey, look, this is kind of what Dak's looking at here. This is what we're thinking. I think a big part of his job is not just the installation and everything else. I think he's taken, a big hand in helping to communicate some of the thoughts and concepts to each other at a lot of different points.
Let me say this, though, and I'll do it real quick if I can.
Yep.
The only way that Schottenheimer will call plays if this thing goes completely south, and Mike McCarthy knows he's done at the end of the year, and he's trying to audition Schottenheimer for some other jobs down the road. He, might be in a situation like, hey, it might be done for me, but if he lets Schottenheimer maybe have 2 or 3 games, if this thing is completely off the rail, and Schottenheimer shows that maybe they moved the football and everything might be good with him, or they could have moved the ball, it's an audition. He's doing Schottenheimer a favor for what his dad did for him. That's the only way that I could see this working out that way.
Next question here let's go with this question from Danny Tam on Facebook. Brian, we'll lead with you. When watching the film, does the recent statement / claims made by Troy Aikman hold validity? And for those that don't know, he made some comments about laziness from the receivers in their routes, basically put a lot of the offensive issues, in Aikman's opinion, on this wide receiver group, including CeeDee Lamb. Brian, what did you think about that?
And this is like the $100 million question, that everybody's asking about. To me, watching tape, I don't think you have great route runners. I think the last great route runner you had here was Amari Cooper, the guy that could separate, the guy who could set up routes, the guy that this wide receiving core leads the league in tight window throws. If you're not separating, you're not going to look great doing it. It's going to look lazy coming off the ball. They don't have any really explosive players with the exception of Cooks, who is on the injured reserve. They have Turpin, who's little and can run, but he's inexperienced. You would love for him to develop like Cole Beasley. That was a pretty solid route runner for you back in the day. But if you watch them run routes as a group, their explosiveness coming off the ball. Mike McCarthy does these guys no favors. No favors. You need these teams that struggle with their route runners need to play on the move. And I'm not talking about everything has to be motion, but bunch formations, twins to bunch, scatter. Try and create opportunities. But when you have a group of wide receivers that don't separate, those aren't great route runners. Those are guys that lack explosive, quick twitch, but they've got size and they catch the ball pretty well in traffic because that's what they have to do.
Yeah, nothing's jumped out to me to the level that it did with Troy, but like Troy played in the league for forever and won 3 Super Bowls. Bryan won a Super Bowl. Scouts this stuff. He knows this stuff at a professional level way higher than I do. But when I'm watching it, there was nothing that really stood out to me. But it's also one of those things where it's hard for me to be critical on the level that Troy was when he included last season. And it's like, well, damn, if CD was that bad that last season, I mean, how did he end up, leading the league in receiving yards and having this monster year? Because if he was running routes so poorly, there's no way people, I didn't hear a peep from anybody about giving CD a new contract. But things aren't going well. So I can get behind that. They probably don't run them great as a group. To your point, Brian, it's not like they are a bunch of guys just running wide open. So I'm sure that's part of the problem. But obviously when Troy says it, then everyone's going to look at it as like that's like the biggest problem and the biggest issue. And I think it's part of the problem, no question. But I don't know that it's the biggest issue.
Yeah, I tell you what, real quick, Bobby, post-bye last year, 9 of 26 on the slant route. 21 of 22 on the hitch, 18 of 25 on the out, 7 of 11 on the post. Got 4 touchdowns out of that. Go route, 6 of 17 for 151 yards and a touchdown. And the crossing route, he was 11 of 16 for 79 yards and 1 touchdown. Those were CeeDee Lamb's best routes post bye last year.
I'll say this too.
So you think we're going to see more of that?
This is the problem I have, John. Pre-bye, crossing routes, 6 of 10, 85 yards. Hitch, 6 of 8 for 54. Slant, 6 of 13 for 54, no touchdowns. Go routes, 4 of 8, 147 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Screens, he's 4 for 4. Out routes, 3 for 5. The targets are down, but you look at some of the routes that he had, he's running routes that he ran post-bye last year, and they're not having success with those.
Yeah, I haven't seen as much. To me, anyway, laziness did not stick out. Now, I heard one person privately say they thought CD was playing a little lazy, and then Aikman said it a couple days later, and it made me go back and look. I don't see lazy. I see bracketed and taken out of route concepts a lot of different times, and it's just not
moving.
I don't see a lot of issues with effort with him, at least to me. I could be completely wrong, but
the effort part, people will scream about the red zone interceptions.
Yeah,
you got to come back and get the ball. You got to come back and play defense. We saw Cooks in the game. Before he got hurt, he got a pass interference penalty, breaking up an interception.
Yeah. All right. We'll finish up here with 2 more quick questions. First one from the YouTube. We're covering all bases. We got Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube today. Frog Rogers on the YouTube says, how much of it is lack of effort and how much of it is lack of coaching? When they give up, and the coaches can't even get them back in the game. Are the coaches the problem? So the idea of, I guess here...
Did you talking about the defense? What's you talking about?
We were talking about the CD stuff, and I think it's just in general a catch-all for, here's the way that I'm positing it, unless he wants to correct me here. I think the thought there is, how much of quit or effort or laziness in any respect is on player responsibility versus coaches have to get them back in? Is it a shared responsibility? How do you divvy that up? John, I'll let you go first.
I'm going to sound real old right now. Okay, I'm 42, but I'm going to sound like I'm 62. It's on the players for me. I think right now in sports, it's hard. Coaching is as hard as it's ever been. You can't get too hard on guys because then they'll kind of clam up, and it's almost like you gotta say a bunch of positives before you maybe I'll say a little negative right here because I don't want him to completely shut down. I just think you have to operate with kid gloves to a certain level. And to me, when I say that, it's not really just an NFL thing. I think it's across sports, and I'm not just talking about pro sports either. I'm talking college as well. You see, especially and NIL factors into. You just see so many of these coaches stepping away. And you just look across the landscape of college coaching, and it's basketball, football, whatever. It's nowhere near the level that it used to be because I don't know that you can coach as hard as you used to be able to. So that's part of it. The other part of it for me is you're a professional NFL player. Like I don't need rah-rah speech from some guy that's not making an eighth of what I make. Like I'm sorry. Like you're a professional football player. Even if you're on the worst team in the league, the era we live in now with social media and everybody being able to get your hands on all 22, like I'm running every one of these routes, even if we're down 40-10, as well as I possibly can. Because the last thing I want anybody coming back with is coming at me and saying that I didn't give enough effort. Like I'm going to make sure that you're going to see, even if we run a run play and I'm a wide receiver and I got to go out there and block, even if we're down 40-10, I'm going out there and blocking because I don't, one, out of my pride for myself, but two, people will find this stuff more than you've ever been able to find it before. So for me, I lean more towards the players on that. If there is a lack of effort,
he nailed it.
Boom. There you go. All right. This last one was not actually submitted to us, but I wanted to read it because it's from our buddy Jon Owning over at PFF. And I saw him tweet this, and I think it's a great one. And you can leave it as a rhetorical question if you like, but I'm going to throw it to you guys. John tweeted this yesterday. What does it say about a head coach when his team needs significant changes going into the bye week every year? Yeah.
John nailed it there as well. I mean, this is the problem that you run into with Mike McCarthy and hopefully things that happened in week 7 last year that were going along poorly offensively, that they figure some things out. The problem is they need to figure it out on offense and they need to figure it out on defense. The thing that bothers me the most about Mike McCarthy right now, and Jerry Jones even brought it up and tried to take it back, were some of they didn't scheme some plays very well. Their play design has not been well. But I think the thing that bothers me the most about Mike McCarthy is when he talks about it and the players talk about the poor practices they have. That right there bothers me more than anything, because that's directly on the head coach, the coaches, but it's also on the players too. Teams that are bad practice poorly. They don't do everything in their power to get. And I feel like sometimes the Cowboys might use it as a crutch, but now they're saying it way too much. Every blowout loss, there seems to be, we need to be better. We need to be pros. We need to study more. We need to practice better. That seems like a very crutch way of answering how you just got your ass handed to you.
Yeah, and I think some of the guys might not even know the answer and might just lean on that because it sounds
good.
Yeah, because I go back to the end of the year, after that Green Bay loss, probably the most noteworthy quote was when Demarcus Lawrence talked about them being tired. And I don't know that Demarcus even believed that. I think that Demarcus might have said that because he was kind of put on the spot. He was doing one of those interviews. I think he might have been on ESPN, like a Stephen A. Smith type show. And I think that he was looking for an answer that he didn't really have. And so he said that as kind of like a, just a kind of a tossed away, like sports cliche. And it ended up being something that still I don't know, when the season started, people still bring that up all the time and rightfully so, because how could somebody, how could you really be tired at that point in the season? Like that should be when you are, the arrow's pointing up, you're playing your best football. You're at home. You just got the 2 seed and you have played better than any team in the NFL at home. So I do wonder if the practice thing, because, Dak pointed it out after one of post-game press conference and kind of, raises eyebrows and you're like, wow, really? I can't remember a time that Dak has said that before, and so it makes you think about that. And then obviously we can't see more than the part of practice that we can see when we're there is just very it's not going to be the part that tells you if there's effort or not, it's not the X's and O's parts that, when they ask us to leave, obviously. So, that is an interesting one, because you would think, again, professional athletes, you're in week 6. You would never think that you would hear the words fundamentals, small things, practice issues, things like that. And those are kind of alarming when you do hear that.
Yep.
That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Jon Machota for joining us as well. You can follow him on Twitter at Jon Machota, and you can check him out over on the Athletic and One Star Cowboys podcast, which is about what they're worthy of being rated right now, this Dallas Cowboys football team, about 1 star. I think it's pretty fair. For Bryan Broaddus, Jon Machota, I'm Bobby Bell. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.